Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Star Wars discussion video. This one is going to be my preview, my final thoughts before we head into Star Wars The Clone Wars Season 7. First episode is going to be airing on Disney Plus on Friday the 21st. So we've only got a few days to wait, and I suppose now is about time for me to give my thoughts about how I'm feeling heading into this final season of The Clone Wars. So, first of all, I suppose what we know. We're getting 12 episodes. They're going to be airing weekly, so it's not the case like Netflix that they're releasing the entire Season 7 at once. We are just getting the first episode on Friday. I will be doing reviews of each individual episode on the channel, so look out for that. Friday's going to be a pretty busy day for me, just because the 21st is also the 15-year anniversary for Avatar, so that will probably take up my videos for that day, meaning that I'll probably get my review for the first episode out on Saturday, so the 22nd. That's just kind of the way the dates have unfortunately worked out this time. But after that I should be able to get reviews out on Friday with no real issues, so that's where we stand. Now, what exactly is Season 7, the final season, covering? As far as we're aware, we're getting 3 arcs here. The first arc is going to be the Bad Batch arc. The second arc is going to be the Ahsoka, Coruscant, the Ahsoka Walkabout arc is I think kind of what it's called. And then the final arc is going to be the Siege of Mandalore. That is going to be the arc that brings us basically into Revenge of the Sith time. It's going to feature Order 66 happening, but obviously from a different perspective, more focused on Ahsoka and what she's doing, as well as advancing the Mandalore plot onwards, in addition to also being the sort of return of Darth Maul arc. So there's definitely a kind of gulf in class, I think, between, especially I suppose, the first arc we're going to be getting and the third arc. One of my worries, actually, that's probably the best thing to discuss here. One of my worries heading into this season is just that them deciding to have the Bad Batch arc as one of these arcs in the final season, I'm wondering how that's going to work out for them. Just because the other 2 arcs are important because they're Ahsoka focused arcs, and it very much feels like, you know, the Clone Wars, the finale that is the Clone Wars, it's Ahsoka's finale basically. It's meant to set up the Ahsoka novel and then where Ahsoka is in Rebels. So how is that other arc that doesn't feature Ahsoka going to work, a clone-centric arc? In many ways that works, you know, final season of the Clone Wars, you have to have an arc that's about the clones. How's it going to work? Now, the other thing in this is that we already have seen the Bad Batch arc, which, you know, that may be a surprise to some people, but they did release this in its sort of animatic story reel form, all 4 episodes of this arc. They released it on StarWars.com after one of the conventions a few years ago. So if you look out there, you can actually just go to the Wikipedia page for all of these episodes and find out the exact details of what happened. I think you can even still find the episodes on YouTube and stuff like that in their, of course, incomplete animatic form. But it's still, like, reasonably well done given that it's incomplete. I actually watched some of it just here before recording this video to kind of remind myself of it. And yeah, you get, like, all the key sort of visual bits and, you know, it's fully voiced and stuff like that. So it's all there. And that's where I'm slightly worried that we're leading off with an arc that a lot of the most hardcore fans have already seen, already know exactly what happens. And it's also an arc that isn't necessarily about the main topics that we want to be focused on in the Clone Wars, in that this arc isn't as such about like Order 66 or anything like that. And while it deals with some, I suppose, characters we care about, it is more of just a sort of action-centric arc. And so I just worry a little bit that waiting a month, like it's 4 episodes this arc, it's a third of the season. It's going to be a month before we see Ahsoka in these new episodes. And because it's episodes we've already seen, I hope the hype that is generated around Season 7 with all the trailers isn't going to immediately be down here for the first 4 weeks because of all those factors. I hope the arc maybe has a few little new things they've added in the years since, finalizing and completing the episodes, and that it can deliver just something a little bit different than what we've seen already. I think the core of it's going to be pretty much exactly the same, but I think they could switch a few little things around. I was almost wondering, like, would there be any chance that they could, like, you know, edit it down to only be like 3 episodes so we get an opportunity to have like a solo episode, but it doesn't look like that's the case. It is just going to be the same 4 episodes that we have, and we'll see if anything is different at all. Now, don't get me wrong, I think it is still a very good arc. Like I said, I think the final season of Clone Wars needed an arc that was like clone-centric. The finale arc is going to be clone-centric to a degree, in that like Order 66 is coming into play. But this one obviously is going to link more heavily into, I suppose, the clones that we know. So basically Domino Squad, like ARC troopers, rookies, you know, the defense of Kamino, and so on. All those episodes are focused on those characters from that squad. Fives, the death of Fives in season 6 and stuff like that. It's, you know, it comes back a bit here, without spoiling all that much. But that's sort of what we get to focusing on, in addition to, of course, meeting the new squad, the Bad Batch. There's already, I think, been some specific trailers released covering this arc to hype it up for Friday. And you've probably seen what these guys are like. So there's fun because they're different. They're very different types of clones. They both look different and also have different sort of approaches and personalities. And so it's quite good. You know, Anakin's going to be in this one as well. It's the only thing I'd say about it is that I don't think it has the same level of impact as the other arcs we're going to get, because I don't think there's anything inherently huge character-wise that happens in these episodes, nor does it have the same effect of like an episode like the Fives arc with the touching on Order 66. None of that's quite here, but it's going to be a solid start, I think. So then we move into the Ahsoka Walkabout arc. And this is probably the arc we actually know the least about of the 3. We actually know quite a bit about the Siege of Mandalore finale. But this one, it's actually just a little bit unclear. Like, we know it's going to be Ahsoka on her own. This is going to be the arc that actually explores basically the results of the Season 5 finale. Ahsoka choosing to walk away from the Jedi Order, not come back, still feeling betrayed by the Council. She basically says, you know, I have to figure these things out on my own. Who am I outside of the Jedi Order? So I think it's just going to be interesting from a character point of view to see Ahsoka on her own, not part of the Jedi Order. One, how she interacts with just the rest of the world not being a Jedi, having to just be a civilian effectively, and how her sort of heroic approach as a Jedi is going to change, and given that like she's not going to have her lightsabers or anything like that. And who are the characters that she meets. We've already seen that female character she meets in the trailers. And that there's a little bit of action. We're dealing with the sort of lower levels of Coruscant, whereas Ahsoka is more used to the higher levels. So that's going to be a bit of a contrast. We've already seen Ahsoka in a few of the arcs deal with the sort of underworld, the criminal underworld of Coruscant. So this is going to be her kind of, I suppose to a degree, sort of being part of that for a while. What I'm very unclear on is ultimately what the plot of the arc is. Where do we get to over the course of these 4 episodes, in that, are we going to end the 4th episode of this arc? Because I believe it is just that each arc is 444, as far as I'm aware. So I don't really know exactly if that's the case, but I'm assuming this arc is going to be at least, you know, 4 episodes, if not 2 or 3. I'd actually be a little bit surprised if the finale is only 4 episodes. So, you know, that could change. But I think either way, it's an arc. It's multiple episodes. But the main thing I think we know it focuses on is that this is her, you know, thinking about her decision. Now, we also know from the production of this show that there's meant to be other arcs that take place in between this one and her returning. So that sort of gives me the impression that, like, this arc isn't going to end with a direct setup for the finale, and more just end with like Ahsoka in a position where maybe she's more open to maybe going back or rejoining, which I suppose begs the question of like, what way are they going to approach doing that? Is that is Ahsoka's return at the start of the Siege of Mandalore arc, or do they edit it in such a way where it's at the end of the Ahsoka Walkabout arc where she's brought back in? Other than that, like, I don't really know what to say about this one outside of the fact that, like, it's going to be Ahsoka and I think 2 friend characters that she meets along the way, and just having to deal with the fact that, like, she's not a Jedi here, so she can't just do things the way she usually would, so she has to sort of, I suppose, let some criminal activity go ahead just to keep herself undercover. Like, I suppose she's going to have to hide a little bit of the fact that she's a Force user, hide that she is a former Jedi to a degree, and she's not going to be able to do those things. Very similar, I think, to the way that Obi-Wan Kenobi book took that. I think it's now Legends, but how its approach was to dealing with, you know, Obi-Wan on Tatooine, in terms of, like, he has to just be this hermit. He can't actively interfere with what's going on, even if he really, really wants to. It is imperative above all else that he hide the fact that he's a Jedi and use the Force, even if it means bad stuff happening around him that he could stop and would have stopped in a different situation. So, that Ahsoka dealing with that could be, I think, very interesting, especially because Anakin is her master. I think we might see her develop that sort of kind of wish that, like, by the end of this, that I need to be part of the Jedi Order to make a change, and I need to be able to sort of put that hurt behind me just to be part of something where I can actually make that change. I'm wondering, will they approach any of that? Like, just this sense of, like, she needed this time off, but that by the end of the arc, she'll realize that, like, this normal life isn't for me. That, in a way, like, her destiny is something more, and that she may have to just accept that the council did what they did, and I can be upset about it as much as possible, but that the order needs me, I need the order type thing. How they get to that point, I suppose, is interesting, because you don't want it to just be like a situation where it comes across as if Ahsoka made like a harsh, sudden decision, in that we're all behind the decision that she made and the need for her to be alone for a while. But you can't have it be so sudden, her just after one arc immediately going back. So once they write that well, I think it should be okay to have her return be what it is, because the way Ahsoka is designed for the Siege of Mandalore arc, it looks like a decent amount of time has passed. So that's what gives me the impression that it probably will be more of like the Siege of Mandalore arc that brings Ahsoka back in, rather than that middle arc that does it. So again, not really sure about what that middle arc is exactly going to be, but it's probably where a lot of the big character stuff for Ahsoka is going to happen. So then we move on to the final arc, the Siege of Mandalore arc, which was, as far as I'm aware, always planned to be the finale of the Clone Wars. This was meant to be the very last episodes of the Clone Wars, full stop, because this is the arc that overlaps with Revenge of the Sith. We've seen that in the trailers, and that we've seen the sort of Jedi Council meeting with all the Council on different planets, like Mace Windu saying what he says, but from a different perspective, because, you know, you see where each character is. In addition to the fact that we see, like, Anakin talking to a pregnant Padme and so on. We know Order 66 is going to happen in the middle of this arc, which I think is that scene of, like, Ahsoka and Rex and the doors closing as all the clone troopers come in. So there's a few things they're going to have to cover here. One, are they going to say anything about when or, like, why, the reasoning behind Rex taking his chip out? Like, I think we know he basically knows about it at this point without knowing the full story, but, like, will they cover the details of when that happened, and I suppose Ahsoka being filled in on that at all? Just, I suppose, how we get to the point where, like, Ahsoka and Rex are sort of together in this. Similarly, like Commander Wolf, like you need to cover him. Gregor, will any of these characters, like, be touched on in all of this, or not? It's sort of unclear. The other thing, though, in terms of setup for this, is probably the most important thing that people have already been asking from the trailers. Darth Maul. Are they going to explain how Darth Maul gets back to where he is here compared to where he was the last time we saw him? I think the episode The Lawless, which is the last episode before the Ahsoka arc at the end of Season 5, he was, of course, defeated by Darth Sidious and captured. His brother, Savage Opress, of course, was killed. So, as far as we're aware, Maul should just be imprisoned by Darth Sidious somewhere, and he has plans for him. So, what's going to explain how he gets out and is suddenly back on Mandalore again? As if he was never captured in the first place. What's going on there? Well, this is where the whole situation of the Clone Wars ending before it was properly finished, and then them deciding to do some of the arcs in different media come in, of like, technically some of the Siege of Mandalore is covered in the Ahsoka novel. All of Darth Maul's in-between story is covered in the, Son of Dathomir comic series that was put out. I think it's 4 issues. Actually a very good comic series if you want to check it out. But there is this disconnect in a way of like, that is a huge part of Darth Maul's arc. Are you just not going to cover it at all? I feel that they need to do something like that here. I get to a degree the idea of giving the extra material of some level of respect and just trusting in a way the fandom to be able to go out and find that material and not just be like, how did Darth Maul get from here to here? I'm completely like ignorant of the fact that this comic exists. But you need something in there, even if it's just a very quick summary of things. That comic covers a lot, so a little bit of spoilers here if you don't really want to know about what happens in that novel, but like, sorry, in that comic series. But like, the stuff that happens here is very impactful in that, like, you get to see, I think it's Dooku's first interactions with Darth Maul, so that's a huge thing, the rival sort of Sith apprentices. That would be really cool to see in animation. You have Darth Maul dueling Grievous multiple times. You deal with Sidious's relationship with Mother Talzin and the fact that they have a former dynamic. You deal with the fact that it's revealed in this arc that Talzin is actually the actual mother of Maul and Savage Opress. And, you know, the proper death here of Talzin as well, which is ultimately what Sidious kind of wanted to accomplish. And like the reveal in that comic series, I believe, is that the plan that Sidious had for Maul was effectively almost to like kind of let Maul escape, team up with Talzin to lure Talzin out of hiding, to eventually lead to Talzin being killed. And it's pretty cool because like it links into the episode from the Clone Wars Massacre really well, in that Grievous was of course primarily responsible for that, and Grievous is the one who kills Talzin. But it means that you have Maul going into this arc after escaping all of that, his mother sacrificing herself to save Maul, to allow Maul to escape from Grievous, Dooku, and Sidious like coming after him. It paints Maul in a very different situation in this arc compared to, I think, anyone who won't have read the comic will just see it as like, oh, he suddenly escaped and is back. Like, very simple compared to the completely different situation here of this is a sort of broken Maul just trying to make something happen. So that I hope they do something in the same way that I feel they need to almost do some filler stuff with Ahsoka from in between the Walkabout arc to how she comes to lead the Siege of Mandalore effectively. They need to do a similar thing with Maul to set up what's going on there, in addition to, I think, just the status of Mandalore since everything happened. But yeah, beyond that, all we know is that obviously when Obi-Wan last left Mandalore, of course, Satine was killed. Bo-Katan like helped Obi-Wan to escape, and the idea was that like Mandalore is now sort of a battlefront in the Clone Wars. It's just complete chaos. Everything is sort of broken down. It's the remnants of a bunch of different factions just fighting. Like Bo-Katan is leading one. There's still like what's left of Maul's forces, and like I suppose some people are still loyal to Pre Vizsla. You still have like the governor guy and so on. It's a crazy situation, but the idea is that Mandalore, meant to be like the main neutral system, is now a huge centerpiece in the heart of what's going on here. And so this is an important setup arc in a way for, like, one, the Darksaber. We need to see what goes on with it. But I believe in this arc, you know, it has to remain in the hands of Maul. So Maul is going to hold on to the Darksaber the entire way through. But But with Mandalore, we of course have to have Bo-Katan surviving, and I think likely some sort of a key character moment with Bo-Katan to establish what goes on in Rebels. In addition to the fact that like Order 66 is how the Empire effectively comes to a head, so you sort of wonder like how will, in a way, like this is asking the question of like what will the final scene of the Clone Wars be, because Order 66 is the end of the Clone Wars. But are they going to end just with, you know, showing Rex and Ahsoka having survived, or dealing with the fact that the Empire is now here? That's sort of where the real question is. But again, that's something we can speculate on closer to the time. I think we probably need to see what the introduction of that arc is like to be able to understand how they'll bring it to an end. As for the events of the Siege of Mandalore, the setup is mainly that it's Ahsoka leading the siege because, of course, Anakin and Obi-Wan are removed from whatever mission they were on previously to go and save Palpatine, who's been kidnapped. That is the Revenge of the Sith setup. It also, I think, bringing Ahsoka in at this point in time, it helps to resolve the issue that everyone has had about like Revenge of the Sith of like, why doesn't Anakin mention Ahsoka? Well, he doesn't mention Ahsoka because she's just returned. He's kind of happy, confident that she's back. She's in the Jedi Order. She's, you know, helping in the war just on a different front, and it's fine. And that sort of helps to explain why Ahsoka is not at the center of Anakin's mind in all of this, because he's dealing more with the idea of like Palpatine's been kidnapped, Padme's pregnant, and everything that happens with the whole Jedi Council situation. So it helps to explain why Ahsoka isn't really the centerpiece of everything. It does make me wonder, will they potentially end on a moment where it's like Anakin as Darth Vader thinking of like, has Ahsoka survived Order 66 or not, trying to sense her? Because like we saw their interactions in Rebels, but I really wonder, will we get like an early example of that as like a key point? Because again, another key part of the Clone Wars has been showing sort of Anakin's distrust of the Jedi Council, the growing sort of dark side within him. Will they do something like that to end? But like I said, the majority of like the battle and what exactly happens is sort of unclear, in that a lot of it is just going to be battle, battle, battle. We're just waiting for the button to be hit on Order 66. And then what exactly happens in that, as far as we're aware, Rex is going to be the only clone with the chip removed, so it's going to be Ahsoka and Rex on the run from everyone. But also we assume Maul is going to be a target in this as well. So where is Maul in or around the time where the Order happens? Because he's probably going to be targeted by everyone as well, because he's an enemy, a rival, I suppose, of Sidious and Dooku. You know, Dooku, I suppose, will be... I suppose, like, if they get to Order 66, that means Dooku's dead already, so will that come into play? Will anyone be able to sense his death? Because obviously it means that the campaign on Mandalore has to be a pretty long-running thing to cover that much ground. You know, the few days that it takes for Revenge of the Sith to play out. But yeah, it is really all about Order 66 happening. Now, the Ahsoka novel basically reveals to us like most of the results of all of this, in that we know, of course, Maul survives all the way up until Rebels when he's killed by Obi-Wan. We know Ahsoka survives all the way up until like she's still active right now, and that's going to be whatever Star Wars Rebels sequel thing we get, searching for Ezra and Thrawn and whatever. So that explains that. So it means the big duel they're hyping between Maul and Ahsoka, the hype there isn't about who's going to win between the two of them, because they're both going to survive. I think the hype there is more of, this is a huge opportunity for Ahsoka to really prove herself here. Like, Maul is this expert duelist who can basically fight up against anyone. And it's going to be a huge thing if Ahsoka can fight him one-on-one and stay in that fight. That will be the biggest proof of all that she has basically got to the rank of knight, and is, you know, getting towards that level of being a master. And I think it's just going to be that proof of what level she's at in a way. And then just the hype of, it seems like they're doing a crazy animation job on that. They brought in like Ray Park and stuff like that to do kind of mocap for the choreography. So it's going to be really, really incredible to see what that fight looks like, how long it is, and so on. But ultimately, we know that, I think the Ahsoka novel, I think, explains the details of like how she like escapes or sort of like traps Maul somewhere while all of this happens, because of course their duel doesn't end with either of them dying. And then we know how Ahsoka and Rex escape Order 66, is that like they faked their deaths. Like Ahsoka has to basically kind of like bury her, I think her lightsabers or something like that gets buried along with like Rex's kind of clone trooper armor, giving the idea of like their graves effectively, and they kind of run away sort of together, and you know, that's what starts basically Ahsoka's progress in the Ahsoka novel, and eventually like Rex going his own way and meeting up with Gregor and Wolf and rebels happening and so on. So it'll be interesting to see what exact notes they choose to hit on in terms of like, you know, ending that arc. Is it just ending on a really tragic note, or are they going to build to like Ahsoka's still out there, there's still the hope of her, and you know, and then just because of Star Wars, like, will they try and link it into like touch on Luke in any way, on Tatooine? Will they touch on Obi-Wan being, you know, where he is at the end? There's room for some surprises, even though I suppose maybe we know exactly how some of the stuff is going to play out, but maybe the details of everything is where we really don't know how everything will play out. But yeah, and like I said at the very start of this video, it's going to be interesting how the first 4 weeks go, covering the arc that we already know about, the Bad Batch arc, the arc that of all of them feels the least important. While still being a good arc, it's the one that will feel the least important. I hope the hype level doesn't go too far down, knowing that we're going to have to wait a month before we get into Ahsoka, and then knowing that we potentially have to wait another month before we get into like the big Ahsoka stuff, depending on what exactly the middle arc, Ahsoka Walkabout arc, does or does not do. So that's most of what I want to say here. I'm very interested, come the end of this, will there be any demand from the fans for the rest of the stuff to be done in animation? And that's what I mean, like the Son of Dathomir comic be done, a lot of the other arcs that they had planned, like the Ahsoka, like Jedi Temple arc thing that they had planned. There was a Kashyyyk arc they had planned, and of course the novel Dark Disciple was like, I think, an 8-episode arc to cover the end of Ventress's arc. That feels like probably one of the few things that is just really needs to be kind of done in animation to just finish that off, because like Ventress is a Clone Wars character, full stop. It feels weird that the ending of her arc happens in just a book and not the actual show itself. Boba Fett, I think, had arcs planned, but I think I get the impression that those were sort of scrapped a little bit earlier on, because the like Boba Fett movie / TV show, whatever the plan was something that was sort of being planned, and so I think that's why Boba Fett is kind of left in the lurch in a lot of this stuff, and like not knowing anything about him beyond that last time we saw him, which I believe was the Ventress bounty hunter arc, where like she basically put him in a box. I think that was Boba Fett's last appearance in the Clone Wars. So, you know, a lot of that stuff would be nice to see, but at the same time, if we keep asking for more and more, like, when do you stop? But there's a few things that I think that people would really appreciate, especially because like the Dark Disciple arc is really, really good. So I would like to maybe see that one done. But yeah, I suppose in the aftermath of this, the main thing will probably be looking ahead to whatever the next animation project is, because like in the grand scheme of things, Resistance, pretty much a complete failure. I don't think anyone cares too much about that show. So what is the next big thing? They know this is a huge success, which is why they brought it back. Rebels, I think most people see as being pretty good, but not as good as Clone Wars. So you need to have another show to cover the setup from the end of Rebels, but you need it to be directed along the lines of, I think, more of the Clone Wars than Rebels. So I think that's what we'll be looking forward to in the aftermath of that, of like, we now have this crucial part of Ahsoka's story to transition us from what was previously her finale and then Rebels. Now we need to see where she goes post Rebels in terms of like going back to Ezra and more of that setup. So yeah, that's been my thoughts on my preview for the Clone Wars Season 7. Like I said, my first review will probably be either this Friday or Saturday, leaning more towards Saturday just because of the Avatar anniversary coming up. So definitely look out for that review. I plan to do them weekly as they happen. But yeah, in the comments, let me know what your thoughts are heading into Season 7. What do you think of the 3 arcs that we're getting? What do you think will be the strengths and weaknesses of this season? Just start some discussions in the comments. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.